Hi everyone, welcome to Curious People Wanted. I'm Dr. Daryn Reyman-Lock, curator at the Barnum Museum in Bridgeport, Connecticut. My journey of discovering Barnum has only just begun, so today I thought I'd take a look at the history of museums and how Barnum revolutionized the American concept of one. Museums have their origins in the 18th century and really began as little more than collections of interesting objects assembled in one place by a person interested in exploration and the natural world. Known as cabinets of curiosity, these early museums were inaccessible to most as they were private collections. However, as time passed, owners began selling tickets to see their wonders, and thus the idea of the museum began. The first museums, as we think of them today, were organized in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The earliest, established in 1782 by Swiss naturalist and portrait artist Pierre-Eugène du Cimetière, was simply called the American Museum. The institution seemed to present everything from documents to coins to fossils to preserved insects, all of which were collected during du Cimetière's extensive pre-Revolutionary War travels in the West Indies and along the eastern seaboard of what would later become the United States of America. A short-lived enterprise, the American Museum closed just 2 years after its opening, following the death of its founder. The void, created by the closing of the American Museum, did not last long. In 1786, artist Charles Willson Peale opened his own museum in Philadelphia, aptly named the Philadelphia Museum. Initially begun in 1784 as a display of 44 portraits in his own home, the museum quickly expanded and adopted a single mission: to document the history of the New World. Ultimately, showcasing paintings, natural history specimens, inventions, and a menagerie, which included bears, a bald eagle, and a monkey, the Philadelphia Museum adhered to the idea that a museum, first and foremost, should educate and inform. Despite this, Peale did add curiosities like a 5-legged calf and the trigger finger of a convicted murderer to his exhibits. Peale retired in 1810 and left the museum in the hands of his 2 sons, Rubens and Rembrandt, who later added lectures and live performances to the museum's offerings. The sons were also responsible for opening satellite museums in other locations. The Baltimore Museum and Gallery of Fine Arts opened in Maryland in 1814, and the New York Museum of Natural History and Science in New York in 1825. This New York Museum of Natural History and Science was secretly purchased by P.T. Barnum in the 1840s. While the Peale brothers were responsible for really broadening the definition of what a museum was, selling it as more than just a bunch of really cool stuff to see, there was another change happening at the same time. Early cabinets of curiosities allowed people to handle and touch objects, to study them up close, but the collections weren't bound by any systematic display or by theories and research. As the 19th century wore on, the function and purpose of museums changed. They became places of science and research and began to be arranged to link themes and ideas. Items were arranged thoughtfully and enclosed in cases with labels and information. However, Barnum, always looking for the hook, put his own spin on these maturing public spaces. Although the Peale Museum's contents were added to Barnum's collection in 1842, Barnum had actually entered the museum game the year before when he purchased the failing American Museum in New York. Initially established around 1791, the museum was falling into financial difficulty by the 1830s, and the last proprietors, the Scudder family, decided to sell the institution. When Barnum assumed control, he drastically altered the enterprise. Although he combined the scientific and cultural collections, much as the Peales had done in their museum, he added performers, lecturers, natural and human curiosities, and even opened the first aquarium in the United States by 1857. By offering multiple forms of entertainment and engagement, and charging only 25 cents for entry, Barnum made the museum more appealing to all cross-sections of society. His museum wasn't only a place for education and the upper classes. Instead, it was a place for the whole family, which offered everyone various ways to question and learn about the natural world and society as a whole. Open to a broader demographic, the American Museum was also open to the free African American community and burgeoning Irish population in New York, something which at the time was socially progressive. As part of the museum's program, Barnum also gave many inventors their start, as his technological and craft demonstrations showcased everything from sewing machines to glass blowing. Barnum was so successful that other entertainment entrepreneurs copied his ideas, and dime museums, small institutions specifically geared toward the working classes, began springing up throughout the United States. There continued to be a divide between the lowbrow amusements offered by the dime museums and the highbrow educational museums, particularly after the Civil War. However, by the 1870s, publicly endowed museums were established, many of which are still in existence today, like the American Museum of Natural History, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Boston Museum of Fine Arts, and the Smithsonian. Interestingly, while dime museums no longer exist, the divide among museums still does. Some embrace a more Barnum-esque style, adding showmanship and interactivity in various forms, while others take a more scientific approach to the world and their collections. The showmanship that Barnum introduced to museums came at an interesting time in history, when 19th century society and politics were rapidly changing. He was the first to provide museums that all sections of a population, immigrants to locally born, children, adults, men and women, city dwellers, and rural visitors alike could witness popular culture change as a city or a nation's political and social life demanded. Thanks for joining me today for Curious People Wanted. Make sure to keep joining me as we discover Barnum together by subscribing to our channel. And remember to stay curious.